Lots at stake, as you know, with what we need to keep in mind, really reading the tea leaves as she does so well. Great to have back with us Bloomberg News Middle East geoeconomics lead, Dina Esfandiary. She is with us from Geneva, Switzerland. Dina, it is always great to get some time with you. I know it's later where you are. What is your read on what's going on at the White House here and those headlines that Tim just laid out for you?
First, thanks for having me. So I think really what Prime Minister Netanyahu will be trying to achieve with this meeting is first to really impress upon the Trump administration how critical this time is, how important it is that during the negotiations with the Iranians, President Trump really takes on board Israeli red lines, and there are several of them. One is to roll back Iran's nuclear program, and most importantly, I think, is to roll back Iran's missile program. And this is where the sticking point is likely to be.
Well, the nuclear program, we saw what the U.S. did to that in 2025. What are the details that we need to know about the missile program and what the U.S. or what Israel wants Iran to roll back?
Well, the missile program is critical to the Iranians. They developed it indigenously, largely, under waves of sanctions. So it's a source of pride. But most importantly, it's Iran's first line of defense. They really consider it critical to their deterrence capabilities, especially after Israel really attacked its partners in the region, its proxies that it was also using for defense. So for Iran, its missile arsenal is critical. It's quite advanced, and it can reach most of the Middle East, which is why for Israel, it's a real concern.
Yeah, totally get it. I mean, realistically, you have followed this region, this area for a long time. And I don't know whether it's conversations with you and with others that Iran is where so much of the terrorist activity, right? The various groups that threaten the region and threaten peace or stability. So what's the likelihood? What is the kind of agreement that Iran signs on to that would lead to greater peace and less terrorism in the region?
Well, Iran has been pretty clear what its red lines are. It appears clearly willing to talk about its nuclear program. Not all aspects of it, but most of it. I think Iran's ability to enrich uranium is a little bit of a sticking point. But beyond that, it's been very clear that missiles should be off the table, that it won't talk about them because they're so important to Iranian defense. And finally, it's shown a little bit of openness to talk about the state of its relationship with some of its partners in the region, partners like Hezbollah, Hamas. These have always been critical, again, to Iranian defense, but I think they're considerably weakened. And so while they may not be on the table as such, Iran is never going to break off support to Hezbollah, for example. It may be willing to talk about aspects of this support, how it could roll some of it back, take into consideration some of the U.S.'s interests in the region.
Well, Dina, speaking of the U.S. in the region, we're getting some headlines from the Wall Street Journal. The U.S. plans to send second aircraft carrier to the Middle East. The Wall Street Journal cited 3 officials on aircraft carrier deployment plan. The president has not given official order to deploy the carrier. This all coming from the Wall Street Journal just moments ago. In terms of the buildup of the U.S. military presence in the region, what should we be prepared for?
It's clear that what Trump is trying to do is really demonstrate to the Iranians that the threat of military strikes is a very credible one. And that the U.S. and its allies are preparing for any kind of potential blowback from the Iranians. Having said that, the U.S. has more than enough capabilities present in the region to already conduct airstrikes on Iran. The additional capabilities that are being sent are really to improve its ability to defend its assets and its allies in the region, and also give President Trump the option of having a much longer military campaign against Iran, should he want one.
President Trump certainly talks about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, certainly in friendly terms, has for a long time. And yet there has been some pressure that he has also put on the Israeli Prime Minister. But is that friendship potentially problematic in figuring out a deal here?
I think that the Israelis are a complicating factor for President Trump's plans. He's campaigned on being a president that wants to avoid wars, that doesn't want to get bogged down in the Middle East. But the U.S.'s relationship with Israel is part of why President Trump right now is trying to be so strong when he's facing the Iranians. It's also part of why he's sending so many military capabilities to the region to ensure that Israel is properly defended if the U.S. strikes Iran. So it's a complicated relationship, but it's absolutely not a relationship that's in doubt in any way.
One last thing I want to ask you, or we want to ask you about, you've got a column out, the $108 oil war. I mean, I'm looking at crude right now, New York crude, or West Texas, at about just below $65 a barrel. But you write this column, Can the Middle East Crash the World Economy? And you look at three broad paths for how Middle East shocks could play out. What's the most extreme case? What's the most likely case? Because something like this will certainly have global economic implications.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the extreme case. The extreme case really is one in which President Trump strikes Iran hard. Iran sees this moment as existential, and so it retaliates hard. What does that look like? It looks like not only striking at Israel and at U.S. assets in the region, but also at energy infrastructure throughout the region. It may also follow through on its threat of closing the Straits of Hormuz. And if it does that, then not only is oil production being hampered, but the export of oil is also going to be in trouble. And that's a scenario in which the price of oil may skyrocket. The more likely scenario is that this is going to be some kind of managed escalation where we are likely to see a short but temporary brief spike in oil prices, and then the market will adapt shortly after because the Iranians and the Americans will try to find an off-ramp.